Hello everybody, today we are going to discuss fable and parable. So I'll tell you that what exactly is fable and what is parable, what is the difference, the origin, and some other facts, some interesting facts related to fable and parable. So let's begin with fable, that what exactly is a fable. So fable is a short story, a succinct story which actually uses plants, animals, inanimate objects, forces of nature, legendary creatures as characters. It means such inanimate things or creatures are anthropomorphized, or that is we can say personified in the story, and it has some moral, which some pithy one, some very succinct one, terse one, which can be used as a saying. So that exactly is a fable, and uh, it has more of, we can say, an oral transmission or tradition than literary one. We don't find, or earlier actually they were not written, so literary transmission had been very less. It transmitted or spread or disseminated through oral tradition, like from grandparents to their children and to the future generation, and that way it went on or it progressed. Now, if we trace back its history, so that can be found in 550 BC around, when a slave named Aesop lived. So it means we can trace back its history to 550 BC, as he said, when Aesop survived, or Aesop lived. He was a slave, and he narrated lots of different stories, though no written story or no manuscript survived today. We don't have any such proof of any in the form of any manuscript or any such written document today. But yes, we find it mentioned by different writers like Aristotle and Plato, and different other writers mentioned this Aesop as a storyteller or as a fabulist. So today we know Aesop's stories, or the stories which are credited to Aesop are known as Aesop's fables, Aesop's stories. They are found in the collection titled Aesop's Fables, as I said. And the stories like the crow and the pitcher, or the thirsty crow, and the grapes are sour, and all these are actually from Aesop's fables. Even like people may not know perhaps about their origin or so, but this is the fact that they are all Aesop's fables and Aesop's stories. And it has a culture, or there has been fables in other cultures and other countries as well. If we talk of Africa, so there too it had an oral culture, like grandparents after retirement or post-retirement, actually they were quite respected. Of course, grandparents in all over the world, in all cultures, they are respected. So in Africa, the grandparents after retirement or post-retirement, they would enjoy a different role. They would be the storytellers for the children or their grandchildren, and the children would enjoy listening to the stories from their grandparents. So this way it we can say proceeded in Africa. And one Mr. Joel Chandler Harris is said to have written or compiled certain stories by the name of Uncle Remus. So first I mentioned about Aesop. Aesop's fables or Aesop stories are quite popular, and he lived around 550 BC. And then I said in Africa, which actually is actually a African American culture. So Mr. Joel Harris, Mr. Joel Chandler Harris is credited to have compiled some stories by the name of Uncle Remus. The stories which are the fables which are quite popular by Uncle Remus is Brer Fox, Brer Rabbit, these are Brer Bear. They are quite popular stories, quite popular, famous. They still survive and go around us and people know them very well. So they belong to African American culture of fables, and they tell us more of that culture and that tradition. In India, if we talk of fables, so Jataka tales or Panchatantra stories are the source of such, have actually such kind of collection. In Vikram Betal's story, most of the people know, they have heard and they have seen even on television. Yes, they have even have been telecast on television. So people know these stories, they have read those stories in several books, they are published. So India had a different culture of such fables, which are known as specially Jataka tales or Panchatantra stories. Even in Ramayana and Mahabharata, we have fables as side stories or back stories, and quite famous among the children. So they still survive and go around us, and children come to know through today now in nuclear families, we can say through television, otherwise through books we get to know about them. In Europe it arrived quite late, and it was in 16th century by a fabulous Jean de la Fontaine. Yes, the fabulous named Jean de la Fontaine. So this Jean de la Fontaine compiled certain stories and he brought it to Europe. So this way we can say this or fables had a long tradition, a long history, which comes from 550 BC and even before that, and even today they survive and they are around us. Today, of course, in modern times we can say fables have been trivialized and they got confined into children's books and stories only, and not for the adults perhaps, but we can say that these fables actually have an important role. It means the moral they preach or they convey continue to have a lasting impact upon everybody's life. We can learn from those stories, those fables at any stage of our life. They contain such pithy sayings or such really relevant lessons in them that we can learn from them at any age and at any time. So this is all about fable. Now, what is parable? The only difference between fable and parable is that in fable I said plants, animals, legendary creatures and inanimate objects are taken as characters or anthropomorphized, but here in parables we don't take any such inanimate character or any plant or animal to be a character, or we do not personify them. So they don't have any role, only human beings are the characters in parables. And the other thing is same, they explore ethical concepts. Parables, of course, they have some moral in them, they convey something, some lesson, of course. And mostly we know about biblical parables, that is which are a part of New Testament. the preachings uttered by Jesus Christ, or say the Gospels of Jesus Christ, they are said to be the parables, and they are also short stories, and they convey certain moral lesson. So, and it's not necessary that, though some scholars have said that only the Gospels in Bible, or the Gospels of Jesus, only they are the parables and not the others. So that is the view of only certain category of scholars. But of course we have other critics and scholars who say no, any allegorical story can be a parable that conveys some moral lesson, that can be a parable. So today we have lots of other parables as well, but most of the parables definitely belong to Bible, or the most famous parables or the popular parables that we know today are the prodigal son, the good Samaritan. These are the parable of 10 virgins, so they are quite popular even today. And apart from that, if we talk something away from the biblical parables, we have rooster prince, father and son. So such parables still survive and going around us, and we can find them in some books or some other things, or through say our grandparents or so. So we find them survive even today and going around us, still alive. So this is the difference between fable and parable, and I hope you must have understood that what is a fable and what is a parable. And I'll come up with different parables for you, the popular parables which are even today talked of, and even today they are praised or they are narrated. So I'll come up with such certain parables for you. So till then, stay connected, keep watching. I'll come back with more such things. So bye bye. Thank you very much.